Well, the old autumn/winter campaign hasn't exactly gone according to plan. The last time we were down here, we had Dick from Australia over, and he was fortunate enough to catch 320s on my rods that day, so that was a right result. I came down the week after, put a bit of bait in, and then unfortunately I was ill for a couple of weeks, and the last thing I was thinking of was getting down the lake to bait up. So unfortunately that coincided with the weather dropping, temperatures dropping, and the time of year when you really do want to keep that bait going in. And as a result, you know, probably haven't done myself any favours. But I came back down last week to do a night and to get some bait in, and the lake actually froze up on me. The weather forecast hadn't predicted that at all. Woke up in the middle of the night, thought, oh, it feels a little bit chilly. 1 o'clock in the morning, looked out, there's a bit of cat ice around the edges. 7 o'clock in the morning, looked out, and there's 2 inches of snow everywhere, and the lake was also frozen solid. I managed to break the ice around my tips and sort of sat there for a few hours hoping that one might go and I might be able to tussle it through under the ice. Unfortunately that didn't happen, so I'm back today. I've dropped in the same swim that I was fishing before. Obviously I am a little bit familiar with it, but also the reason I like this area is because, well, I mean, look at this swim, it's an absolute state, and if you go around the rest of the lake, they're all nice and clean and dry. So as a result, people don't really drop in here so much. The main reason though is because the area that I've had most of my bites from out of this swim is an area that you can't really hit from any others. There's a swim around the corner here. To fish to that spot, you're fishing over loads of pads, so you wouldn't get the line there, and obviously it's quite dodgy as well. And the other one on the other side, you're fishing over loads of pads and you just can't get to the spot where I've been having them from. So I don't think this, or that particular spot, gets fished that much. There's loads of pads and loads of reeds around the back there, and also know it's 4 to 5 foot deep, so there's a fairly decent bit of depth for this lake just off of there. It's also a known winter holding area, so you know, lots of reasons for me to drop back in here. So as I say, the rods are out on pre-baited spots. I'm fairly happy with them. Got another rod just up the end there, fishing off the corner of some pads. I don't know, there's every chance we might have a bite. It's not ridiculously cold, there is a bit of a nip in the air, but there's always a chance. In the meantime, I've got a couple of little tips and tricks I can show you. You might be able to put into your own fish on your own little syndicate lakes. Well, not just syndicate lakes, anywhere you're fishing really. Here's an absolutely fantastic little tip for you, and that is to wash out your baits before you're fishing. Now, whether you're pre-baiting or you're just turning up for a day session, you know, fish are coming across baits all the time, and when a bait's been in the water over a period of time, it tends to get washed out, you know, it takes on water, it will lighten up, and it's quite obvious that it has been out there a while. And I'm sure that carp, you know, on pressured lakes will go round and only eat the ones that have been in there for X amount of time. You know, they know when they're safe, because generally, you know, anglers won't leave a hook bait out longer than sort of 24 hours. So a bait that's been out in the water more than 24 hours, you know, is really swollen up, and they'll pick it up with a lot more confidence. All right, so clearly, really simple thing to do. Put your boilies into a waterproof container. Then I like to just add enough water to just literally cover the baits. Like so. And then what I like to do is add a palm full of sea salt. This is the old Malden stuff. Just got to have the best, haven't you? Palm full of that in there, wash it around. And what I'd do is I'd actually get some water from the lake on one of my baiting up trips. You don't really want to be using tap water, because obviously that's got chlorine and all sorts of other stuff in there, which might taint the taste of it. And then leave them, well, say sort of 24 hours is a good one before your session, but you can leave them longer. Obviously they will soften up, so if you leave them too long, they'll get to the stage that they'll end up sort of coming off the hair pretty easily, so not too long. I've heard of some stories actually on one particular day ticket lake. This guy said to me that he was going over there, literally getting his baits, you know, leaving them sort of 3 or 4 days, so that they're almost floating up, you know, they're almost going rancid, and literally he's plopping one of them out, and he was getting a bite within half an hour, you know, so the fish just don't see any danger from it, and then mopping it up, even though it probably doesn't taste as nice as it would when it's nice and fresh, and you know, the results were there to be seen. Some people like to add liquids to the water as well. I like to go for the washed out look. So the salt's there just purely because carp love salt, you know, and it's not really a strong scent, it's just a bit of a taste enhancer, if you like. And as I say, this is a brilliant tip whether you're going down a day ticket lake at any time of the year, or if you're fishing your syndicate where you've been baiting up. Cell's been used all over the country with massive results. but if you want a little edge over the bloke next door who's using it, then give this a go. There's another fantastic little tip, something I was taught many years ago down in the Garrison Lake. Basically, if you're fishing a small bay or anywhere where you can cast across to the far margin, if your line's going through the water, it's potentially going to scare the carp off. You know, we know that carp are definitely spook off lines these days, on not just on pressured venues, but any type of venue. So if you can keep that line out of the water, it's a massive edge. So what I want to do is fish across to that fast bank over there. There's a big bed of weed and a bit of an overhang, so I would like to place a bait just off of there. To do it from this bank here, I'd be going over a bit of weed there and possibly a couple of pads there. I know there's some dying pads just to the left of that as well, so chances are your line's going to be sitting up in the water and not particularly great really. So here's what you do. First of all, get your rig, cast across. Obviously I've got a nice little bit of open bank there, so I shouldn't go into any trees. Dunk. Right, rig's over there on the grass. I'll just set my clutch so I can pull off a bit of line if I need to, but I want it fairly tight so I can make sure I can get the tension and pull the line above the water. Right, that'll do. Let's get round there. Right, so obviously I've got my line with my rig on the end of it here. I've also got a bank stick with a solar line clip on there, normally made for rods. Well, if you are doing this, it's worth cable tying that on or just putting a bit of tape around it, because if you do get a bite, quite often it blows off, and when it blows off, it ends up in the water. So yeah, well worth putting one of them on there. So I'm just going to wedge that in the ground. I want a bit of height on there, that should be all right. And obviously just making sure that line's out of the water. And then you've got your rig here. Now this margin here is quite shallow. It's probably not the sort of ideal spot for it at this time of year, but I'm sure, you know, lots of people out there will be thinking, oh, that's the perfect thing for this spot or that spot. And if you have got a nice deep margin, then it is absolutely ideal. So pinching that bit, swing. Oh, lovely. Just falling next to that weed there. And obviously you can make sure that the line between you and here has got plenty of slack. So what I do is clip a loop in there. Now what you might find, depending on how far across you're fishing, is that you're going to get a fair amount of tension. So what I like to do is wedge something in that loop. A feather was what I was using last time I was doing this, and it just so happens there's a feather next to me. I'm sure you can always find a feather. If not, maybe just a little bit of stiff mono or something, you know, sort of stuff that you use for chod rigs, just wedged in there to hold that tight. And as you can see, it's nice and slack off of here. Line's well out of harm's way, rig's perfectly positioned there. And what you get when you get a bite, obviously that smashes off of there and you get a massive drop back from your rod. What you also find with this method is that the fish, because they feel resistance from this side first, is they shoot straight towards you. I was doing it in my new syndicate lake in the summer. I was literally casting sort of 40, 50 yards across. So there's quite a lot of tension in the line. And yeah, just massive drop back. And one of them, I was winding in thinking, oh no, there's nothing here, nothing here. And suddenly, it was below me in the margins, you know, where it just shot towards me. So it really catches them out. Fantastic little tip, and as I say, if you think about where you're fishing and where you might be able to apply this, I'm sure there's somewhere that's suitably perfect for it. Well, it's been a rather chilly and unproductive day. Haven't actually seen anything, to be honest with you. I've had my eyes on the water. You know, always look for them signs in the winter, anything showing, any little bubbles, you know, it's worth acting on them. Unfortunately, I haven't had anything to act on. So I think my plan for the next one is, obviously I've given this swim a few goes now. I think I'm going to try a bit more of a mobile approach, dot about a bit more. I think, you know, it's a good way of fishing in the winter. But before I do go, obviously I'm just going to wander around, trickle a few baits in here and there on the spots that I was baiting before. Not a lot, just 30, 40 baits in each spot, and obviously get back down, hopefully in the next few days before it gets too cold. And yeah, have a little mobile day session. So we'll see you next time.